I am Michael,
And I'm Abby.
and we're the pricing guys. Today, we are going to talk about pricing lessons from very, very, very obscure places. Um, and I think this is a weird thing that you and I do. Like, we'll read something in the news, and we'll be like, "Hey, what impact? Like, how does this impact what we do on a daily basis?" So,
Michael and I are serial Reddit fans, so we'll scroll the hell out of it
yeah,
and like forward stuff to each other. Saw a really interesting one the other day. Luigi M. Everyone kind of,
Mangione, right? Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
He obviously everyone knows what he did, um, but it was interesting that he's been getting so much uh, people reaching out to him that he had put out a notification saying, "Listen, all these people are sending me pictures. Can you limit the amount of pictures you send to me to 5 pictures? And can you also, be aware that law enforcement is looking at these
Oh,
pictures
so
as
he's got
well?"
some fans. He's got some,
So
yeah, okay.
Luigi obviously has a
Yeah, that's
fair
good.
amount of fans, and I can imagine saying that law enforcement's going to look at
Sure,
it
sure.
too.
Yeah.
That they must be
Well,
some
he
interesting pictures that he's
he's
getting as
raised a
well.
ton of money on his legal defense. I think there was a one of these like online things where you raise money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay his legal bills.
Yep. And I think it was like over 300 grand that he's raised to pay these legal bills. But I think what we're getting at, neither endorsing him or condemning him one or the other, but this is a guy who like did something that was so out of line and like so beyond, allegedly did something that was so
Allegedly.
out of line, um, and kind of black and white. So when you expect how people would react to this, it would be you'd expect a much different reaction. But it's a wildly different from what we would expect that we're seeing happening. And he's got this groundswell of support behind him and whatnot. I think what's kind of interesting and bringing this back to our world is that, there's a formula on how this should have played. You know,
The
did some,
scenario. The
yeah,
scenario. Yep.
something bad happened. We go get the person. Now we should punish them, and everyone should dislike them, right?
Yep.
But it's totally gone a separate way. And I think what's the learning here is that so often we get into believing these norms, these algorithms, that this is how things should play out in my business. I move this or I invest here, and this is the return that accrues to me. Um, I think what's kind of the lesson here that a lot of companies need to take into account is, and I'm not even calling this a black swan event because it's not like once in a generation. I think these things happen much more often than we give them credit for. Is that there's a lot of things that don't fit in the algorithm. There's a lot of things that go
Yeah.
outside that. And unless you're looking at it and you have the analytics behind it and you have that performance review process, you're missing out on all of it. And you know, there can be real repercussion.
But I think it's not only that, it's the fact that all these models and all these things that we do, scenarios, it's based on past behavior. We're trying to model out based on what happened, or maybe we do some research and we see, okay, this is going to be super successful and this is kind of what's going to happen. And it falls apart. In pricing, we see it all the time. Like how many scenarios people do on like, I'm going to do this promotion or I'm going to put in this program or I'm going to take this price increase. And then it doesn't go their way. And it's almost this like shock. And no one's prepared that, hold on a second, like maybe we didn't have the right analysis. Maybe we didn't think about a couple of different things that it could go the other way. And it's this big kind of shock that exists when it's not what we expect.
You know, we were dealing with a company just the other day, and they had launched a product out there and had done some pricing research behind that product, and the product abysmally failed. So they were kind of like, "Hey, we did this best in class conjoint. We
Yep.
had a statistically significant sample. We had the shelf set up and blah, blah, blah. So as we were kind of looking at it, we're like, okay, so let's see what you guys had actually done. One, this was a pretty innovative concept, right? Um, Helping someone actually understand that and what that is and in that online environment. I mean, one, you put them in the online environment, you have 100% of their attention and they can understand what's going on. When you put that out into a real world store, you're in a different world, right? Like, how long is that person going to actually look at the shelf? How long will they have time? And how can, unless your marketing is like bang, spot on, you're hitting the targets that you want to hit, we've created something illusion, and we're expecting that same level of execution. So of course, when we looked at, they said you can get this premium price for it, you put it out there, we abysmally failed, we're losing listings. Yeah, of course, doesn't make sense on what we did, but we followed a formula. This was our NPD process. This is what we always do. All right, well, how well have you been hitting? Not too well. There's a reason why we're always going on discount like 3 months after. And then why we're
Yeah.
always talking about, should we rationalize this product 3 years later? And then we keep on learning the same lesson over and over and over.
Yeah, if I think about it, we see the same thing. It's a bit of a consumer goods example, but you see it all the time in the software space too. Is that I think no software company's gonna sit in there and being like, okay, my product roadmap is done. Like I'm not doing anything else, right? Like they're always like adding stuff, features, and doing all this stuff. And what I see a ton is it's the same formula for I added these features, now I'm gonna plug it in as an add-on. I added these features now. And what happens is like you get 2, 3, 4 years down the road and you look at it and you're like, I'm not even 100% sure what you're selling here because like you got this mishmash of things that like have come together. And the answer is like, well, we've always done it this way. And this is kind of our process for bringing these things to market. But what ends up happening is then they look at it and they're like, well, now we can't get customers to buy it because customers are confused. They don't understand like what the value is here. They don't understand what the
You
packages
have to
are.
be a developer to understand
It's
what's going
crazy.
on.
It's
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
need like a specialized degree to like even understand how to price these things. And it's crazy because it's there's I saw one the other day, it had like 4 different pricing models together. I was like, "I've never seen something this complex." And I'm like, "If I just go on your website and I can't understand it, how are you explaining this to a customer? What do they understand? What metric are we even using here?" And the response is, "Well, that's the process that we go through." And it's interesting because it makes me reflect on that Luigi example that we've always done the same thing. And yeah, it works in a context or you get the result that you expect, but at a certain point there's a shift. And you have to be one, you have to understand when that shift kind of happens, but you have to be ready to move and you have to be ready to shift out of there.
I like your software example. And for us, when we do software projects, like one of the most value added things that we do is when we sit down with them and truly understand what's going on and kind of simplify it in terms of how to create the packages once we understand. But that's where all the values created. And what I really I think is kind of so interesting is that, we've worked across so many kind of software and tech firms. And it still takes us like 4 hours to sit down with the
Yeah.
team and get that understanding. Like, God help, like a regular customer and God help, like a salesperson explaining that to a
Oh
regular
yeah.
customer with these 4 iterations of the pricing model and whatnot. And I think, you know, again, it's having somewhat and I'm not sure what the word is, but you don't necessarily trust the algorithm. Or things aren't always you always have to have that hairy eyeball that you're questioning these things. Do they make sense? Does this complexity make sense? And I think one of the critical things to do from that perspective, and maybe it falls on the Luigi side too, is like you got to flip around and you got to look at it from a customer's perspective. And that's often what we're doing, right? Like, how would a customer perceive this? I go on your website, I don't even understand what you're selling or what business you're in here.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? You're saying your 5 competitors are this. Like, You guys don't even look like I can't even understand what your package is versus their package or
Mhm.
what you're selling versus them.
Yeah, and I think in places where it should be simple, right? In most software applications, when you're going to the shelf at a grocery store, like it should be a simple decision. I understand when it's something a little bit more customized and a complex service or something like that. But I think there's still a better way to do it. But especially when it should be kind of a simple decision, a simple comparison, I think you really need to make it easy for the person on the other side because if you're making them work and they need a degree to figure out what's going on, that's not helping you, right?
The more you make them work too, the more they're going to dive into your packages and trade-offs, and the more price will become into the discussion as well, which is exactly, you want your customer focus on value, how you're serving their needs, not dissecting your
Well,
pricing and your structures and why is this price for this and this is price for this and I'm never going to
well,
use
it's
this,
crazy
right?
you say that because like one of the biggest things I see is people go to like this like they over engineer this thing, and then what happens when you have these things? Like I think of two things. I think of like a frog that's got like a lot of like warts on it, and like you don't actually see the frog, you just see kind of the warts. Or I think about like a menu, and like you got all these things in the menu, but the problem with when you menu everything, like it's super easy for people to trade off. And what ends up happening is it's an administrative nightmare. Like people go through and they're trying to figure out like, oh Lord, I have like these 15 different menu items and now I got to put them through a system and here this discount. Like you're
And
just
then we
creating
can never
crazy inefficiency.
change the prices because
Oh
it's
my
so
Lord.
complicated. And we have to give it to Shirley, and Shirley takes 2 weeks to do this. And then we have to take it to the audit team over
Oh
here.
yeah.
And then we got Sarbanes Oxley on top of that, that we got to go and do this. And it has to be updated by someone else in this system. Yeah, that's the craziness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of the times is we over engineer. And it's not only in software, it's all across the board. It's
Yeah.
we over engineer these things and we make them overly complex because it's the way we've always done it, and that's been the path to success. And we don't get to a spot where, yeah, maybe we flip the lens and say, "Ooh, this is a little bit different."
I need to replace a couple windows, and I had like a couple of suppliers come in
Mhm.
after like getting through double pane, nitrogen, this, that, the other. Like it was so complex that I was like, let me just delay this purchase, let that cold air continue to leak out. And in some cases, like we're even our own worst enemy because it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I am obviously not able to figure this out right now. Let me just delay and I'll figure it out when I have more time so that I can make this my college degree, right? To kind of get through.
So what you're saying, if someone out there listening is in Windows sales and has a simple,
I'm the
good
guy.
offering,
Me,
make the
hit
call. You
me.
are the core customer.
Especially if you got a discount on them now too. Like I am the guy.
There you go. So I think kind of wrapping up our discussion today, we went a lot of different places, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
From the photos, the windows.
from photos to windows, but I think the big takeaway I think I have is that sometimes we have to look at something that is just kind of so obvious to us and should be happening, and it's something that we expect to happen, but maybe we got to flip the lens. We got to look at it from a little bit of a different perspective, and that can really help us maybe level set ourselves to see, are we in the right spot? Are we optimized from our positioning? Because a lot of the time it can add a lot of good context into maybe some of the craziness that's happening behind the curtain.
Yeah, and it's just that things are moving so frequently and so often that you can't just set it and forget it and let the algorithm take care of us or the AI or the blockchain. It's really exactly what you said. It's having that critical viewpoint of looking at it from multiple perspectives. Are these things still functioning as we would expect that they would
Yeah.
function?
That's all we had for you guys. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.